Greetings, my fellow intellectuals and bookworms. It's time for episode 3 of Pandemic Watch, plus a rant on the apocalypse. So, as of now, more than 2,700 cases are confirmed in China, a jump of more than 1,000 in a single day. And a whole bunch of new cases have been confirmed in countries like the UK and Thailand. So it's getting worse. That's your update. Now, about supplies. I gave you a video on what you should have for your kit, but I didn't talk about how you're going to get it, and I didn't really talk about the types of food you want. Now, obviously, you're going to want your beef jerky. The shit doesn't go bad, and it's full of protein. You're going to want stuff like those mini Star-Kissed tuna packs. Lots of calories, very easy to stock up on. Saltines and stuff like that. Now, you're also going to want things like canned baked beans, green beans, and corn. But here's the other thing. You're not going to be able to cook that shit. In most instances in the apocalypse, most methods to actually cook things will either release toxic fumes, will not work in the apocalypse, or will run the risk of either burning down your house or blowing it up. Propane, you can't use that shit indoors. And if you use it outdoors, like your fucking grill, it'll alert people that you have food in an apocalypse when you don't want people knowing that. So basically, do not do that. And if you try and turn on your own stove, yes, it won't work in the apocalypse, but the second they turn that back on, your house is gonna fucking explode. So your best bet is to just eat it completely cold. It's technically safe. And you might want to fucking eat your food in the fridge as soon as possible, because that shit will go bad. Now, here's what you're going to want to do. Of course, you're going to want to fucking loot the grocery stores, but every fucking person's going to do that. So, the only reason why I, for example, would still loot the grocery stores anyway, in the obvious ones, like how we have 3 groceries, a CVS, a Target, and a Walmart neighborhood market, is because you're going to get something. Now, a lot of food in the grocery would just fucking go bad. But, for example, as long as you're not picky, like you're willing to drink warm beer or room temperature beer, which is perfectly acceptable to drink, there will be food to get. And there's 2 strategies. Try and sneak in without anyone noticing and get out, or be the most intimidating motherfucker ever. Now, being the most intimidating actually does work, provided the other person doesn't have a better weapon. But your best bet is probably a combination of the 2 strategies. So, there's plenty of places to loot that you wouldn't think of, like the 7-Eleven. A lot of non-perishable food is there, things like candy, Twinkies, hell, even the sandwiches are technically still edible, even if they're not cooked. You're going to want to loot places like that. And the reason why I still commit to going to the grocery stores, even though everyone would do that, is because there's going to be at least some resources to get, and you're not going to leave available resources on the table. So that's food you might want to get. Another thing for the apocalypse, a friend asked me what type of government would survive. Well, first of all, sorry to burst the bubble of the anti-government libertarian Republican retards, but central government, even if you don't like it now, is probably going to be reestablish itself. Yes, a lot of civil servants in the government will die, and a lot of the military will die, but even under the most pessimistic scenario, based on my calculations, there will probably be at least 100,000+ U.S. soldiers left, and at least a decent portion of the bureaucracy as well. So the system is set up so someone will always be available to take control. Now, it may or may not be a military-run government, but government will be reestablished. And anyone who, for example, tries to set off on their own, as long as you don't claim to be a sovereign nation, you're probably not going to be curb-stomped. But if you claim to be a sovereign nation, it's probably going to be like the Black Hills conflict in World War Z. You're just going to have your ass handed to you. And a lot of people think that they can get things like mines and set up a field to protect themselves. But first of all, you run the risk of blowing yourself to shit. And even if a bunch of military bases are abandoned, it's not going to be safe for obvious reasons to go onto it. A lot of people will have had the same idea. A lot of people will be gun-crazed lunatics. even if the military does abandon it and no one else thinks to go there because it's so fucking remote, it'll be too far out of the way. If you think you can hide under the radar by having land not worth taking without resources, you'll simply starve to death, because without resources, everything will have to be trucked in for miles, which will consume most of your remaining resources. Now, if the friend also asked, what kind of government would survive in small groups? Mentioned communism. In all rationality, it'll very likely be some sort of strongmen group, or strongmen rule, or big man rule as they call it in Africa. The strongest person will get the most resources, and any remaining excess resources will be distributed to different group members based on how much they contribute or how valuable they are to the group. For example, a doctor would very likely receive an extra ration just for the virtue of having his skills, even if he, for example, wasn't needed, because you need to keep people like that happy. But it would be very fair for people who have valuable skills like a doctor and people who are the strongest, or at least can appear to be able to beat the shit out of everyone. Now, as a leader of a group, your best bet is either very small, because being small travels light, or over 100 so you can occupy territory and become stronger. But I would start my own group in the apocalypse, and essentially the reason why I'd end up being big man is because I would have the machete, would look rough like this, and even though I don't look that strong, I actually am strong enough. And part of it is about being smart. Are you smart enough to loot places no one else are? Can you be the brains behind the operation as well? There will be a lot of groups led by dumb brutes like former football players, and a lot of them will end up starving, if only because their heavy-set frame will consume too much resources and there won't be enough food. So you don't just want a big brute, although that will be helpful. You want someone who's strong enough, but not too strong or too heavy that they suck up more resources than can be provided, i.e. starvation. And ideally, you would also want, as a group leader, someone who's smart as well. So, and I feel like at this point it's time to it's pretty close to time to activate Operation Lifeboat, or Operation Red Alert, which is to deploy the group and start, getting out of the way for the apocalypse. Now, the disease pandemic is spreading really fast in China, and we all know they're covering it up. Just like SARS, government officials have said that the actual number of deaths and cases are being covered up. Now, since it's only affected like 10 people in the US so far in suspected cases, it might not be time to panic yet, but the government really should ban all flights to and from China, and should close the border with Mexico and Canada so people can't get around it at this point, and foreign trade should be shut down. But the thing is, if you activate too early, you'll risk being, for example, bugged out in the middle of the woods with no resources. And provided you didn't get it early, which, let's be honest, a lot of people haven't, simply because getting excess food is a cost people don't want to spend, and a lot of resources are better spent buying things like solar panels and weapons. If you activate too early, you run the risk of not being able to get the resources, but you activate too late, the resources are already gone, there's less to actually acquire, and you run a fucking situation, and you have to balance it out. And let's be honest, a lot of people have lives, jobs, and shit like that. And it's hard to just disappear at once. So for now, I feel like the best course is a wait-and-see approach. But there should be a tactic, but you should start acquiring your shit now. So, this has been episode 3 of Pandemic Watch. Dun, dun, dun. Cue dramatic music, plus supplies and what you need to know about surviving this situation and shit hits the fan in this situation. Like, comment, and subscribe if you're not done. This is Sean Hartnett, wishing you a happy and healthy day.